So we saw this beautiful episode of Krishna leaving from Mathura to Dwarka, and in the process also liberating Muchukunda. So we saw how after 18 invasions of Jarasandha, one after another, each with 23 Akshauhinis, that is, simply put, a huge army each time, and every time the whole army was killed because they were all coming supporting Jarasandha, who was the father-in-law of Kamsa. So all the evil forces were eliminated. And then the 18th time, Kalayavana also came. Kalayavana also nursed an animosity towards Krishna, and he wanted to also fight with Krishna. So he came at the same time as Jarasandha. So Krishna at this point decided that it's time to start the Dwaraka Leela. So he constructed the city of Dwaraka with Vishwakarma, the divine architect, in the ocean, transferred all the inhabitants of Mathura to Dwaraka by Yogamaya, and then he and Balaram alone were there, they left. And then we saw how Kalyavana had surrounded the fortress of Mathura, but Mathura was empty. He didn't realize, and Krishna alone was there. He comes out empty handed without any weapons, and very surprisingly, instantly starts running, as we saw. And when Krishna starts running, Kalayavana was perplexed. He ran behind him, saying, I wanted to fight with you. Why are you running? And Krishna didn't explain, because the inner purpose, as we saw, is Kalayavana had a boon from Shiva that he'll not be killed by any Yadu. So Krishna, honoring that, did not kill him, took him into a cave where Muchukunda was sleeping with a boon that anybody who wakes him up will be burned to ashes. So that's exactly what Krishna strategized. So he goes in, Krishna hides in the cave. This Muchukunda was sleeping, and Kalayavana steps on him, wakes him up, and he gets burned to ashes. Then Muchukunda gets up. He also recognizes, first he is dazzled by the light, then he recognizes that this is the Supreme Lord Krishna, and therefore Krishna tells him that you can ask any boon. And Kalayavana having been killed and Kamsa having been killed, Jarasandha been driven out, Krishna says, I am proceeding to Dwaraka now, and as you have been given a boon by Garga before, you are getting this darshan, you can ask any boon. So Muchukunda offers a beautiful prayer instead of asking a boon. We just saw the beginning. So he continues very beautifully. He says that people are all sleeping. So first of all, Muchukunda was sleeping, as we saw, which symbolizes everyone sleeping. So he says that everyone, I was at least sleeping in this cave, but people who are awake also, presumably, are actually sleeping, because they are not awake to their true self. They are caught in a fragmentary idea of some memory, some impression, and they think that to be me. So this is no different from a dream. So in a dream, we identify with a character, and that character is what is taken as me, and then based on that we engage in actions. But in the waking state also, we actually do the exact same thing. We identify with a character, and the character we identify is based on past memory or past images built over time in various ways. So, and in the dream, we never question the character. It seems real. But when we wake up, we realize that the whole dream character was simply bogus. But the same thing happens now, but we don't question it, because just as we don't question in the dream the character of the dream, we don't question in the waking state the character of the waking state. We take it to be real. But the reality is both are equally false, and this is no different from dream. So that's why Muchukunda says everybody is sleeping. And especially having gotten the rare human birth, they are wasting it instead of recognizing the true self, which is your lotus feet. He says, Labdhva jano durlabham atra manusham. This is rare human birth. Padaravindam na bhajati. So, having acquired this rare human birth, they don't adore the lotus feet of the Lord, which is our own self, which is the true heart of all, and simply caught in fragmentary images of the mind. Then they go about, so he describes the typical life of everyone. They go about, and he said, I did the same thing. As a king, I was engaged in so many pursuits, engaged in so many attachments, acquiring wealth, acquiring power, and everybody does the same thing. They are spending their time in frivolous pursuits, running behind experiences, running behind wealth, running behind temporary things, and by time goes away and their body is simply reduced to corpse, and then they simply become either ashes or earth. So he says, based on whether one is burned or buried. So this is the progression of life of many. But when one is fortunate, as I was, certainly, because that's why I'm here now with your darshan, because when one is fortunate, he says he gets the satsang. So that's why beautifully again Muchukunda glorifies the power of satsang that takes one out of this cycle, being born, identified with some images, and then running behind the goals set by society and measuring oneself based on what the society says. This entire drama, then eventually dying. This is the journey of most humans, how they waste their lives, he says. And the one who is fortunate comes into satsang. He says, Bhava apavargo brahmato yada bhave janasya tarhi achyuta satsamagamaha satsangamo yarhi tadaiva sadgatau paravareshe tvayi jayate matihi. So he says, satsangamo yarhi tadaiva sadgatau. So when satsang happens, then the right way clears up. Then we recognize the falsity of being identified with the mind, identifying with images and all the rest. And then he says the right clarity emerges, the mati, the intellect becomes amala. So mala means confusion. So that's why amala mati is referred to even in Pancharatnam. So amala mati means the intellect that is free of confusion. So when there is no confusion in the mind, and that happens through satsanga, then he says, one surrenders unto you, one recognizes that our very essence is divine and not these partial mental modes of identification. And therefore he says, it is only your grace that removed me from the position of a king, got rid of all my attachments, and situated me without any external attachment. He says, Manye mama anugraha isha te krito rajya anubandha apagamo yadrichaya. So anytime anything is taken away, it is grace. We normally think grace means getting something. It's the opposite. That's why later in Bhagavatam we see a beautiful verse where Krishna says, Yasyaham anugrihnami harishyeta dhanam shanaihi. He says, I take away things from whom I bestow on whom I bestow my grace. So when grace is bestowed, that results in a lot of material loss of attachments, loss of many possessions, but that in turn is the true blessing. So that's why he says, I was blessed to be freed of all my attachments of being a king and just left in this cave alone. And therefore he says, now having gotten your darshan and realized the purpose, I have nothing to ask, because he was originally said, ask any boon you want. So he says, Na kamaye anyam tava pada seva anadi kinchana prartyatamad varam vibho aradhya kastwam hi apavargadam hare pranita aryo varam atmabandhanam. He says, having gotten your darshan and having surrendered unto you, na kamaye anyam, I do not desire anything else. See, that is the true test of devotion is to not desire anything. So when even Bhagavan appears in front and says, ask whatever you want, Muchukunda says, I don't want anything. So this is exactly what Prahalad also says, if you remember in Narsimha Avatar. When Narsimha, after slaying Hiranyakashipu, tells Prahalad, ask me whatever you want. Prahalad beautifully says there, the one who asks God for anything is a vanik. He says he is a businessman. So please do not tempt me by asking me to ask any boon. I do not want any boon. I want to be only surrendered to you in love. So here also Muchukunda says the same thing. Therefore he says, all I want is to simply abide in you, who is the ever pure, beyond all attributes, the non-dual truth, whose pure consciousness I only want to surrender unto you. He says very beautifully, Niranjanam, Nirgunam, Advayam, Param Tvam, Nyapti Matram, Purusham, Vrajamyaham. So Vrajami means I surrender. That is why in the famous verse in Gita, in the end Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So interestingly, Vraja also is the place where Krishna executed all his leelas. So the word Vraja is beautiful because it means surrender, which is also the name of the leelas of Krishna in Vrajabhumi. So here says Vrajamyaham, I surrender unto you. Who? He says Niranjanam, Nirgunam, Advayam, Nyapti Matram. The most pure, non-dual, beyond all gunas, and pure consciousness alone, Nyapti Matram. That is the true nature of Krishna. So when we say surrender to Krishna, he beautifully, Muchukunda describes who Krishna is, and surrendering unto the very essence of Krishna, who is the pure consciousness that is there when the false me goes away. So the me is there due to desire, and that's why he says, I do not have any desire. Any desire takes us into the partial little me. When all desires are gone, what remains is nothing, which is everything, the infinite Lord. So this way Muchukunda offers his prayer, and Krishna is very pleased, and he says that just as I expected, you did not ask any boon. And he says very beautifully, people who are not devotees are the ones who have desire for boons. He says, Yunjananam abhaktanam pranayamadibhirmanaha akshina vasanam rajan drishyate punarasthitam. So people who engage in all practices, including pranayama, yogic practices, they want siddhis, they want powers. And people who even engage in dry speculation, they want to understand. So he says, abhakta, those who are not truly surrendered, they ask for boons. So by not asking for any boon, you have shown that you are truly surrendered, and therefore Krishna blesses him that you shall go now. And with this, Muchukunda's episode gets over, and Krishna proceeds to Dwaraka.